So I did a talk on the Sculptors Cave last night, and I didn't have my microphone on, so it didn't record the sound. So I've got to do it again now. So someone posted about Scottish cave art in the group, and I actually got a suggestion popping up telling me all about it. I think it was on one of the news suggestions, just popped up all about this Sculptors Cave, and I'd never heard of it before. Turns out a lot of people have heard of it, and a lot of people know about it. So I wanted to do a little bit of talk on it. I don't know if some people know about it or they don't, but I'll just kind of say what I think about it. I think it's quite interesting and important. So first, so the site actually it's on this north coast of Scotland, not that far from Elgin area. So we're talking the same sort of general area of Scotland that these recumbent stone circles and some of the cairns are in. So it's immediately relevant. Actually, there was some genetics team actually from Huddersfield. There was a study in the news as well, funnily enough, from around the Iron Age, and they'd found that there were a lot of immigrants coming in onto the island, particularly actually in the Orkney area. I think it was a little bit higher up, in the Orkney Islands, which you can just see them in the top right corner. And they come from, the genetic makeup was from the steppe, which is north of the Black Sea. So, when you go over sort of across towards Russia and down, you got what we refer to, I guess, Bohemians and Gypsies kind of type areas, but that's later on though. But so there were a certain amount of people from on there, and I think there was some Scandinavian reports that there were people on the coast, living on the coast of England, who spoke different languages, and some of them kept strange habits. So this is the area we're talking about there. So these are the caves, right, from the outside. I think that on the right hand side's kind of like a bit of a support that's been put in, a modern support. And I watched a video on YouTube, and what they've done is on the video they've scanned all of the caves. Like they've gone in it with like a scanner and scanned the entire caves. Now they've done that, and the French, one of the really important finds in France, I forgot what it's called now, but a really, really old important cave with lots of amazing cave art and bear skulls and things. What happened, people were going in there and the breath was actually causing condensation and making growth in there, so they had to close it off to the public, and only scientists can go in there with special suits now, if you get permission. But what they did is the French love this cave so much, they scanned the entire cavern network and they recreated a visitor centre that is an absolute identical replica of the entire cave system, the cave paintings, everything, all the skulls and that was in there. What you can go visit, Now, with this cave in Scotland, there's quite a lot of graffiti in there, modern graffiti. There's some kind of early Latin graffiti and stuff, and certain things in there. Now, I think this is another picture of him here. That's another picture there. So, this is the main piece of art that's found in there. And I talked about it yesterday, and I actually made 3 separate videos because every time I'd finished, then I ended up thinking of something else that I wanted to say about it. So I guess I'll go into some of that now. So this left-hand side picture, right? So there are some other cave pictures, carvings that have got actual sort of fish pictorial things on them. So this is quite fish-like, but obviously the fins aren't lined up, right? But on some fish you get fins on the top and fins on the side, like the shark's got a fin on the top in the middle and the ones at the side that don't line up. But the thing is, right, that I think I've got little dots on. Can you see the little dots? When I touch the screen, it shows little dots. So this part here, right, and going in a line through it, right? So actually you could have that that you could envision it, instead of like two separate triangles on each side, if you think of it in an object going through it, it's kind of almost like a dagger or a knife going through the actual fish, you know, which is, if you're catching fish, you've got to do that anyway. I actually think that there's something in this. Firstly, you've got the sun. If you ever go watch Archdruid of Roller Morgfling, he does this thing with the sword and down to the flowers, and it's kind of like the sun. When the sun comes up, it does this little ceremony thing. Now, if you think of this as a monolith and the sun diagonally coming down to intersect with it, then if this is the sunbeam, and actually imagine it as something that's going through it diagonally, then you could imagine it like that. And then also, so if it's a monolith with the sun shining on it coming down diagonally, you've got that. But also, you've got this, you know, when you actually spear, when you fish, even if you go in the bath at home, when you're looking at something underwater, you've got that effect where it doesn't line up because the light reflects when it actually hits the surface of the water. So you've got to aim slightly to the side. So the fact that if you've got one item going straight through, so if you think of, you know, if you put a knife into the water, the actual real knife itself is lined up, but when you look at it, it appears offset. And I think that you could read into that in this, the fact that, you know, you've got this triangle's higher up and this triangle's lower down, so they're not perfectly lined up, symmetrical on each side. One's higher and one's lower. But if it was an object going through, the object itself would be one straight piece of object, you know, whether it's stabbing a fish or... And also, it is the light itself that shines on the water, and it's the same light that shines on the monolith. Now, as for the straight line going down, I think I said something on that the other day, but I've kind of forgotten. Let's just go on to the picture of that. So here we've got you've got this angle here, you see? This is the exact angle. It actually ends up tilting the line of sight. So, you know, when the light shines, the fish actually, when you see the fish, it appears slightly offset, you know? Here we've got, it's called the refractive index, right? The angle of incidence, an incidence ray, and we've got an angle of refraction. So, you know, I think that there's some kind of primitive sort of pictorial representation about that you can read into there, but also fits with the monoliths. And if you think about it, this is the same part of the island that we've got recumbent stones that are studying, you know, the moon and the sun and things like that. Now, this picture here, so I said quite a lot about this, and even when I'd finished it, there was still some more that I wanted to say. So there are quite a few things that I've learned recently from watching Howard Crowhurst. Now, one thing is the fact that when you're in these chambered tombs and the light shines down the corridor, what Howard's saying, and he was actually asking Dr. Gail Higginbottom about it as well in one of the videos that I watched on Megalithomania, he was asking her if the Spanish dolmens, if the light shines down the corridor at an angle, so it actually goes across the corridor. So you've got these diagonal lines actually going across, and it was kind of making me think of that. And you see, because it shines down the bottom of the chamber anyway, and it will bounce off the back wall. Now, also, it's also like a sunrise. The main half circle in the middle is sort of, you know, it's almost like the sun coming up, right? And when the sun comes up, that's when you get the rays shining. And also, the horizontal line going across, a lot of these recumbent stone circles in that area have got the moon lines going across the top of the recumbent stone. So you've got this, it could be a sun going up or a sun coming down, and these rays coming towards you if you're here. And like I said, in some of those chambers, it actually, when it comes into the chamber, it actually comes at an angle. it also does happen to form sort of a bit of a mushroom shape, but this is kind of like a primitive pentagon, you know. And it's funnily, there's some graffiti in the cave that says something about, we don't know whether it's authentic or genuine or not, but it says something about the damned. So maybe that's where they end up getting the Satan pentagon star from. But another thing, if you watch a lot of Dennis McKenna, Terence McKenna videos, Graham Hancock, and you get into ayahuasca and all those type of psychedelic experiences when you go into this sort of like rebirth or out-of-body experience with all this, like back into the mother's womb, or kind of an alien-like sort of out-of-body experience, which is all tied in, and you get this kind of biological imagery of lots of virile growth, cell growth, fractal growth, almost like the biological imprint of life itself. You get all these visualizations and states of this kind of grow. Basically, I think it is actually the power of growth itself, which you could translate that as the power of God, you know, that makes things grow, which could be the Holy Spirit as well. So, you know, you've got this leaf coming out. Obviously, it's got almost like a bow shape to it as well, you know, like a bow when you pull the bow back and then you fire an arrow. But it's almost like a broken arrow itself. The light coming down and then hitting something and then bouncing off back. Now, if something goes into something and it doesn't come back out, it stays in there. You could think of this as a burial mound, like the half shape is a burial mound. Someone's buried in there with no portal or entrance at all. They've passed away, they've gone into the afterlife to the other side, and they're not coming back out again because they got buried under the mound, right? Inside a mound with no entrance. And that could be like an arrow being broken, or a light beam shining into something and not coming back out again. Or you going into the death experience and not coming back out again. But obviously in some of the chambers and some of the tombs, there is a portal, there is a stone entrance or gateway. And a lot of these sites are not completely buried. You know, it's not just a complete mound that's actual. You know, like these are the ones. These are the proto ones in Algeria. You know, that go back really, really far. Which again, it has a kind of mushroom shape on it. But someone's buried under there. You know, and there's no chamber or portal or entrance. It's just a burial mound. Like you get some of the warrior tombs burial mounds that are just a mound, you know. It kind of fits with that. And you've also got the sun and moon kind of emblems in there as well. So, you know, there's that in this. Now, when you get onto the actual chambers that have portals, now you could go into these chambers, and if they were having these psychedelic experiences, which are sort of like, you know, you could call them out-of-body experiences, or the rebirth, you know, being born again, or the experience of dying and meeting the spirit ancestors, and then coming back out again, and you're still alive and growing. It's almost like, you know, something going into something, hitting it, bouncing off and coming out, which is almost like the light shining, you know, from the sun when it rises and goes into the chamber, and then obviously when it bounces off the back wall and then it goes back out again, and you've got this birth, you know, this life, this growing of leaves and plants. So, you know, it kind of can be have a bit of both in it, you know. And another thing, it also, oddly enough, when you look at it, it oddly, you know, this kind of like, look at the actual carving itself now. It oddly enough, going back to, you know, Algeria and these burials, it don't look that much different. It's got a feeling of the Tassila Indonesia art, and I don't know why. It's because the shape of the arms, when he's holding his arms downwards, it makes the burial mound shape, doesn't it? When he's holding his arms downwards, yeah, it makes the you know, like the D shape, but, you know, tilted upwards, you know. So it's got that to it, and it does have, you know, a bit of the pentagon kind of aspect to it, oddly enough. And actually, it does have this. There's this. It's a little bit like that leaf. You know that leaf shape that's on it. It's a little bit like that triangle kind of leaf shape there. I find that kind of really, really unusual that it's kind of got that, like his arms shape to it. If this is authentic and genuine and that hasn't been planted there, you know, I don't know how accurate the archaeological testing is for the dating, you know. Can they say with 100% that, you know, their dates are correct? Or what? I'd like to know what the chances that it can be contaminated on purpose so someone could fake it, you know. 50%? Is there only 40% chance somebody could contaminate it, or 10%? You know, that's what I'd like to know. And also for the Latin writing, or the other writing that's in there as well, the letters. And it looks like that guy's sort of beard as well. You know, that character's beard there almost. And you got this kind of. So it shares some form. Some parts of the form have an uncanny kind of feel or resemblance to it. And actually, I wanted to save I wanted a picture of. Did I get that picture of Petra? There was something on. That one's sort of a little bit different there, isn't it? I don't know if they've done it to make it look a little bit different, because on that one it doesn't look like it lines up exactly to something going through it, does it? But I still think that it's got that sort of. It's got that. It definitely is fish form, and then it's got the kind of like plant form in it as well. You know, going down the middle. Where's the actual? Is the actual one more like? Why they've done it in orange like that? I don't know. I guess you have to decide for yourself. In fact, there's not much left at the bottom side of it, is there? I think that orange one's a bit misleading, actually. You know. But I still think that there is some hint at the refraction in there, because you've got the light beam, you've got the, you know, this coming down and going back up at a different angle, you know. And the same thing with people, you know. When you meet people, some people are, you know, they are some people. What they're actually thinking and doing in their actions is not always what they tell you, or what comes across. You know, there's this sort of some people might not be honest. You know, and in a way, anything a person does is only the sound you hear from them and the light you see from them. So you've got this kind of sense of another human or another creature is saying or doing something, and it might be accurate and true, you know, or it might, you know, they themselves within themselves might not be aligned perfectly to what's on the outside. So they might say something or do something, but they might not be telling the truth, and or, you know, so it's this kind of, in a way, that is a little bit like the light hitting the water, and then you get this, you get that effect, you know, because it something isn't in the position that it purports to be. And you've got that in life, you know, where someone can say, oh, I'm doing this, or this is what I think, but they might not, you know, they might have lied. So you've got this kind of like aspect of things not being exactly as they appear or sound, you know. Maybe that's why you end up getting into this whole kind of pentagram, and it gets into the whole, they took that pentagram sign and used it for, you know, the number of the beast and all this kind of, you know, or getting onto devil worship stuff and that. I think these orange ones are a little bit misleading, actually, because when you look at the actual one, it's actually, the person who's done the orange one has drawn it a little bit different. But I still think there's something in that, you know, with the water, and the fact that when you go into the, you know, the mushroom psychedelic experience, you've got these waves, you actually see the light ripples, and the actual environment, you know, when you're looking at like a wall, the surface of a cave, it actually moves, so that the wall of the cave can be in two different positions as the wave ripples and the light ripples, you know. So I think that kind of lends to that as well. As for the bow, it's very interesting that it actually can look like a bow, and then when you pull a bow back, and it has got these arrows, and you know, you've got these, it could be two arrows going in two separate directions, you know, or it could be something coming towards you and bouncing off and going away. Now, the funny thing that I think is worth mentioning is, although it's on the north coast of Scotland, right, Cove Sea, which is not that far from Elgin, and it's in the area of all these stone circles and things, which are all to do with the moon alignments and astronomical movements of the moon. Which is, you've got this. It can be the moon going across the recumbent stone. You can see it as that, as well as sort of burial mound. Also, I wanted to mention Robin Hood's Bay because, a lot of the Robin Hood stuff's not 100% proven. Some of it's kind of folklore and myth, right? So someone who ended up naming Robin Hood's Bay here, there are quite a few videos on YouTube that tell you all the things that they know about Robin Hood. But Robin Hood is meant to be an archer, so I think it's worth being, going, that's interesting that, Robin Hood's Bay was named Robin Hood's Bay. It doesn't figure or play into many of the main traditional stories. However, it did get its name. There's probably a perfectly good explanation for it. But I think it's worth noting that, Robin Hood's Bay is near Whitby. And, it has got this bow and arrow. And it happens to be on the coast of Scotland. And this is a well-known site. A lot of people will have known this at all different times through history, People who have, been informed, whether it's priest classes or leaders, academics, So I think the Robin Hood's Bay thing's very, very important. Now, the other thing I want... this is the one at Petra, you see. This is the one I wanted to mention at Petra, which is a half-moon shape. And there's a guy who does a video, Sacred City or something it's called. It's on YouTube. It's a really good video. And this American professional archaeologist and investigator, he puts a very strong case for Islam. Actually, he goes through it and all explains it to do with actually the rising and setting of the sun, facing the sun, and actually the drawings on the walls that they have on one side of the mosque. It's always this drawings. He actually believes that it was Petra was the original place. Now, if Petra was the original place, and this is one of the earliest, you got this arc up and this arc down meeting together, right? And it's a very, very old carving. There is, if you look at where these cave paintings are from, in Algeria, which, if you go not to the west out of Africa, you end up going towards Petra, and a lot of those places where these people hung around, where all this art is on these rock faces, it's actually they're all these overhanging places that you can sit under, and it's kind of half sheltered. It's not a cave, but it's a very kind of sheltered place where they could go. And obviously back then it wasn't all desert; it was pastures and stuff like that. So it's the pictures, and the sun would have shone on the walls of these places, and that's where they drew the pictures, And that could have had something to do with the origin of the pictured wall in the Islam when they worship the pictured wall, and then they face the direction of the sun figures into it, That's worth noting, and that's wrong picture. That's when it gets you into all that video that guy's doing. But he's taking, if people came out of Africa and this Algerian cave painting worker went off to the east, that's what it could lead to. And actually, with this, in fact, the bottom part of that, which is kind of like a burial, with this half moon coming out of it, you could relate to these burials, the early burials there, So, and also we've got the mound. We've got the mound in this anyway, We've got the mound on that. So, right. So as for the caves themselves, I mentioned Robin Hood's Bay, and Robin Hood was an archer anyway. Now, when you get the archery symbol, if you just want to mention Robin Hood's Bay anyway and say, what the hell's Robin Hood got to do with it and the name Robin Hood's Bay? Well, it's at the coast and it's called Robin Hood's Bay. We know there's that place at the coast of Scotland and it's got this picture in it with this kind of bow-like shape. Well, the thing is, when we've got these two dual lines going up that go in two separate directions, you know, it's like this duality, two separate lines. You've got this crossover of meaning that we can refer to, which is let us pray, because pray, not only do we use for hunting, it's spelled differently to pray, say your prayers, and to prey on animals. We've got this crossover meaning of to pray for prayers, which is, you know, to put your hands together and to pray, you know, for to God for whatever, or whether you want to do a nasty prayer, which is a curse, you know. It could go either way, you know. You can use prayers for positive or negative, supposedly. But you've got these priests, you know, and when you get into psychedelics, you always get the rainbow colour, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, and it's actually got the arc of the rainbow on this, you know. And obviously the psychedelic experience, you get a lot of these kaleidoscopic colours and everything like that, which is to do with, you know, the priests. If you've done it or not, I don't know whether we have, but I'll just mention it, you know, and then you can look into it further if you want. But then we've also got the hunting prey, let us pray, which is bows and knives and stuff like that. You know, you're preying on animals. So, you know, which is, then you start having arrows and bows, but then you've also got the sunrise and studying the astronomical alignments, and then the light coming through the chamber at an angle as well. And then you've also got the mound, you know, you can be buried under the mound. So there's that in there. I'm actually a bit annoyed with this orange picture here now. It actually looks like a surfboard as well, doesn't it, you know? I'm kind of a bit annoyed that they've drawn it like that, because it does look like a knife sort of going through it diagonally, doesn't it? But it's kind of a bit misleading, because it doesn't look like that on the actual picture. It does just look more like a fin, you know. But it has got the triangle. He's got the triangle shape on it, and I think that still stands. I think I still want to. I still strongly believe that light reflection through the water is relevant, because if you're catching fish and arrows and shooting, it sort of raises that subject matter as well. So the whole Robin Hood thing, you know, and then you know, he shot an arrow, and where arrow landed, he was going to be buried, and the fact that it's kind of like a burial mount shape and also like an arrow, there's something in that as well. Now, further than that, I don't actually got a picture of Robin Hood's Bay. So, actually, you know, I said those people were coming from the steppe, which, you know, if you carry on further than the steppe, you end up going right over to China. And I just wanted to mention, look, if you look at some of these Chinese symbols, they're really, really old, these Chinese symbols. Some of these Chinese symbols are starting to get a little bit like that, you know. And some of the designs on the buildings. So if you've got those people coming to Scotland from the steppe, it may even have a link, you know, to China and the Chinese, you know. I wanted to mention this because, you know, Doctor Who, this hasn't been released yet, this Legend of the Sea Devils in Doctor Who. These creatures featured in some of the old Doctor Who episodes, but they've brought them back. This episode hasn't been released yet. It's going to be out this year. We're just waiting for it now. This happens to be the next episode that's going to be released that we're just waiting for. And they've got these, they've done the Sea Devils again in it. And actually, they've got some Chinese people in it as well, because I've seen the clip. Now, if you notice the eyes on it, the eyes have got kind of a little bit of a fish-shaped sort of eyes. It kind of looks like the Mysterons a little bit off Sting, you know, off the Stingray cartoon. It also makes me think of, if you watch the latest James Bond film, Daniel Craig's got kind of a little bit of eye shape like that. Mine are a little bit like that. I think Daniel Craig's are a little bit more like that than mine though, but you know, so I've always, and they've got him carrying two fish. They've got Daniel Craig in the latest James Bond movie. I think when he first appears, I think, I've only seen it once since, because my brother had it on DVD. But he walks with these two fish. He's caught these two fish himself, and then he just chucks them down on the floor. So I don't know whether that's a little bit of a joke, because Daniel Craig himself is kind of, you know, got fish eye, a bit of sort of fishy eyes. And actually, thinking of the diet and the human diet, we've got this kind of like, there's a lot of Terence McKenna and Dennis McKenna have talked about the mushroom diet and mushrooms having something to do with his evolution You know, Dennis McKenna, Dr. Dennis McKenna believes that it played some part in his evolution. There's another theory for how some people look that could be to do with eating a lot of fish. Because when you eat fish, you don't get your vitamin A in the form that's converted. You get direct vitamin A in its ready form. And if you have a lot or too much of it, it can actually cause liver damage or be stressful on the liver. Now, if there were people eating a hell of a lot of cod liver oil and fish, if they're getting these excess amounts of vitamin A, it could well have been responsible for actually ending up, because vitamin A affects vision. So, you know, excess amounts of vitamin A to some humans who lived in coastal areas or caught a lot of, you know, fish from the streams and rivers could have gone, it could have been behind, you know, shaping people's features and things like that. So I always wanted to talk about that as well, because we're on the fish subject with it, you know. There's this fish subject on it, so I kind of wanted to throw that in there as well, just because that's in the latest James Bond film, and it's going to be in the very next Doctor Who that comes out, and she's actually from Huddersfield as well. So, and it's on the coast as well, you know. These places are on the coast, and they're going to be eating fish anyway. What's the other thing? Right, the other thing is the Lost Boys movie. I just wanted to mention the Lost Boys movie for the reason that in the Lost Boys movie, they've got the Lost Boys themselves, who have been turned into vampires, live in caves which are on the coast. Now, there's some pretty cool videos on YouTube. There's a guy who he goes to movie sets. He'll go to all the sets from the Karate Kid film in one episode. He'll show you all the places in real life where it was filmed, and then in another episode he'll go to everywhere in the Lost Boys film where it was filmed. And he takes you to, I think it's in Portland in America on the coast. There's actually some caves there, but they don't actually go right far back like these caves. They're more like just entrances. And it's really interesting. I've got it here actually. This is it. So what they dressed it all up for the film, and they put this danger and all this old rubble and stuff like that. And it's meant to have been a place where there were all these Chinese restaurants and shopping malls that got swallowed. And you know, now there's the vampires living in there. You know, and that's it at the bottom. That's it now. But they dressed it all up to look like that at the top. And apparently it doesn't actually go that far back into their proper caves. Or they've blocked it off or something like that. It's not a proper full extensive cave network. But the movie's set in a bit of a mashup. It's California but some of it's Portland. But they made a bit of it's like a mashed up dream, a bit of one place and a bit of other place put together. I think these people, the writers and producers of the Lost Boys film, even though it was filmed in California and Portland, now that I know about this Sculptors Cave, which I didn't know about before yesterday, I definitely think they definitely were inspired by this cave. And the reason is they've got this graffiti in there that says about the damned, you know, because they find these bodies are getting buried in there, you know, or deposited in there. You know, people are taking bodies into there. There's all these bodies, so that's when you get the living dead and the sort of vampire tie-in, which would have inspired the movie. Particularly when there's this old writing in there that says something about being damned, and it's got pentagrams in there. And then if you think of this, arrow, you know, this arrow coming through and then going back out again, and this kind of like, you know, this theme of hunting fish. You get the character Max, which is the head vampire of the bad guys. At the end of the film on the Lost Boys, they're not actually in the caves; they're in the house. But the grandpa actually comes with his truck and drives through the wall and puts a massive stake through this head vampire. You know, so you know, you've got this kind of pentagram and dead time. I'll actually play the what I'll do. What I want to do is I want to play the video. Actually, I'll just play it. So this is the Sculptors Cave video, right? and it zooms in. So that's just like, as soon as I saw this, I'm like, oh, it's like the Lost Boys when it shows them it through the vision through there. It shows it through the eye view of the vampires when they're flying through into the cave. I'm like, as soon as I saw it, I'm like, oh, that's like the Lost Boys. And then it just goes through all the art in there. Now that one looks a little bit like a vulture or something. We don't actually know for certain when they were carved, because there is a lot of graffiti in these caves. There's a hell of a lot of modern graffiti. A lot of people have gone in there and scrawled stuff. We don't know which is legitimate and what isn't. Even these Pictish ones might not be legitimate. You know, somebody might have gone in there. That one looks like the inside of, you know, No4, Newgrange, or some other similar sort of chamber layout. Anyway, that one. And then, you know, I'm very dubious. I'm the sort of person who's sceptical about everything. I've done some videos when I'm sort of sceptical about the Gundestrup Cauldron because of some of the iconography on it and the date when it was found. I've got some videos on it. These are some pentagram symbols. Once you start getting into light and different angles of light and start drawing, you know, angles, you end up getting into things like these patterns. You start end up drawing patterns like that, particularly Howard Crower stuff when you're going down, you know, in entrances of the chambers and the light shines at an angle and then bounces off the back wall. Now that's the one that I've been talking about. Didn't show it very clearly on this video, that's why we're using the other example. And that's the plaque there actually. So this is where they've found, you know, certain bodies, you know, and people will. This is the, I don't know if it's in Latin or what. It translates it. But we don't know when it was written, but it's saying that it says W ending 12th of March 169. Whether it was the year 169, I don't know. It says, cursed they be Yathinder. So we've got this cave and it's on the coast, and we know there were bodies found in there, and then we've got this writing to do with translating, saying cursed or something, so with pentagram, and one of them is a little bit like a pentagram, so I'm pretty certain that's where the producers and directors of the Lost Boys ended up, you know, getting their ideas from the Lost Boys movie. Definitely must have been inspired by that Sculptors Cave. The Americans tend to, when they're at school, I don't know why, but, you know, when we were at school, all we did is canals and mills, you know. The Americans, you know, like on Indiana Jones, when he's teaching Indiana Jones film, he's teaching him about burial chambers in Ireland and in Gloucestershire and that, and it always seems the Americans always seem to know more about us. They always tend to study things like these Sculptors Cave and things like that, and I always managed to get hold of the books, you know. I'd never have got a hold of the book that showed the pictures of it, you know, even back in the 70s or 80s, you know. The only way I found out about it is just it pops up on Facebook, you know, and suggestions. I'm like, oh, Sculptors Cave, somebody's posted that, or there's a news item about it, you know, just these random news feeds. So seeing that, I'm absolutely certain it's got, you know, it's inspired behind the Lost Boys. And it's funny that they've got, it's like the other pictures, sort of like a bit of a strange abstract bow with his arrow or broken arrow, and then you've got, like, you know, Max at the end of the Lost Boys getting the stake, and then you've also got Robin Hood's Bay, which is, you know, then you've got a mashup between spirituality and hunting. Now with the vampires, you've got you know, they hunt, they're like hunters, like these sort of creatures that eat human flesh, but then you've got the sort of spirituality side of it that, you know, so you've got the garlic and the holy water and the whole kind of you know, the whole spiritual good magic, you know, that you'd have to oppose it, you know, and all that tied into it as well. That's a bit of more modern history, but I'll mention it because we're talking about Sculptors Cave, so, you know, I might as well mention some more modern things that I think are connected to it, as well as some of the original old you know, carvings and diagrams and that, showing you around it. So people were, this cave is permanently open, right? Now with the burial mounds where it's just someone's buried with a mound over them and there's no entrance or anything like that, in some of those Lincolnshire and Norfolk burial mounds, you know, when it's just had soil put over it and you can't get in or out of it, people have died, they've been put in there and they're not coming back out again. Now, with this cave, it has got an entrance and it's got a permanent entrance, so therefore it is more like, it's a little bit like the Noath and Newgrange and these other cairns that have got, and there's one that's carved out in Scotland as well. I think there's one that's carved out of pure stone in Scotland as well, around the coast. So one of the chambers. So they've got this sort of, it's a natural feature, and you can go into it, and that's why the ancient people would have thought it was special, because it's natural, and you can go into it again and come back out. Now, why have they got taking the dead people into there? Are they taking people who they've killed in there, or people who weren't being straight with people who were being deceptive? Is it the place where they took people that they wanted to get rid of them? Or is it more like a prayer place? They're honouring them. They're carrying them all the way down there, not to hide them or get rid of them, but to put them in a nice place. Maybe there's the sound of the ocean next to it. The waves, the sound of the waves in the ocean. Is it like a special magical place? Well, if you go back to that picture and diagram again with the two arrows and two meanings, you've got two meanings for praying prayers, praying to hunt animals and praying to pray to God, and if they were thinking, maybe in the future people won't know why we put people in there, they'd be naughty, had we killed them, or was it just that they passed away, we want to respect the dead and put them in there, Again, you've got this duality of meanings, this kind of, it could be two, one or the other, But I think that, if they went all the way down there to put them in there, and they drew this picture that it was, like similar to the sun either setting, and this is the thing, right? Another thing I want to mention is this, actually, and I've remembered. So, this is going back out of the cave again. So, if you've got no for Newgrange or whatever, and you do the Howard Crowhurst version of it, actually, this is like, I've got a picture. My bathroom tiles are like that, and I've always kind of thought something, like sensory deprivation or something to do with, if you can, like some of the chambers, you could think of if they can block off light and sound, if people go in there for a religious experience, can it, maybe block off any distracting sound and light or other waves, or even enhance it if you're in a quartz chamber. Sometimes I kind of think that. I'll show you the tiles. I've got my bathroom actually in a bit. Just remember that, and I'll show you them. Oh yeah, so in these chambers that have a corridor that Howard Crowhurst talks about, and it actually goes across at an angle. So they're particularly straight and designed so the light beam can shine straight down inside, and it's perfectly aligned to the sunrise. They build the dolmens in Spain perfectly aligned to the sunrise, And again, in the Lost Boys, apparently sunlight can kill vampires, if they're in the sunlight, This is the bit that really makes you think of the Lost Boys film when you turn around to face it, It comes all the way back round, and then it sort of flies off backwards. And that's the bit that really reminds me of the Lost Boys film when they're flying out of the cave. Now, I don't know whether this cave, it'd be highly unlikely that this cave is perfectly aligned to the sunrise or sunset, because it's a natural feature. Whereas when they built the cairns and chambers, they were perfectly, and there you get the sort of flying away. That's just like in the Lost Boys film, actually. So that's the Lost Boys cave. So what else? Oh yeah, I've got these tiles in my bathroom that are just like that, which is kind of strange, and they've got these waves on them like that. The thing with that cave art is that it's meant to be. They're saying that when they dated it, they think that it's Iron Age, right? And the thing with the Newgrange and Noth and or even the ones in Spain, in northern France. And we know the Celts did a lot of reef knots, Celtic knots and spirals. The early stuff is all spiral work and knot work, right? And we know that in those chambers it was mainly spirals. It's actually got the spiral kind of waves on this bit, and a little bit like in that cave. But the thing with this is that it's not spirals. these aren't actually spirals. It's more pictorial, and they're more similar to the Petra art and to the Algerian stuff, you know, and even maybe even a little bit kind of a bit like Chinese symbols in a way. There's all Chinese symbols, you know. So yeah, in the chambers, the thing about the chambers, right, is that in the normal traditional burial chambers, the light shines down the corridor, and when the sun comes up, you know, or on the shortest day, winter solstice, and it shines on the back wall, you know, and that's the thing in Algeria when they were drawing those pictures, you know, because it's open, the sun would have shone onto that wall because it's not a chamber, it's actually open, you know, as long as, you know, because they've got an overhang on them, people used to draw on them, and then you get this, you know, if you watch that Sacred City video with the Petra's all to do with, and once you get the mosques, it's all to do with, you know, this special wall what originated from. Actually, those the lower arch and the upper arch, it's almost like a bow and arrow archer anyway, in a way. And actually, where's that? Where's these? There's these other ones you see that have two circles. You know. What is there another one? Add some two circles as well. That's another one which is a lot more fish-like. I'm not sure. So, right. So the thing with these caves is this: that when the sun shines, it won't necessarily shine into the cave, will it? Straight down there, because it's not a man-made and aligned site. So that really could have something to do with when they say that, you know, the damned and you know, the pentagon symbols, the opposite of the good and the spirit and the alignments and that, and you could say that it's the misalignments. You could say this is a little bit like, you know, some of the chambers, but it's not aligned properly, although you can go into it and come back out again. You know, it's not, you know, a mound like this that you seal off completely, and that when the person's passed away, they don't come back out again. Whereas with Noth and Newgrange, you can go into those places. You might be like the sun can shine into it and then rebound and come back out again. You know, you can go into it. You might be able to, you know, if you go with the hypothesis that, you know, Terence McKenna and Dennis McKenna and Graham Hancock put forward to the psychedelics, you know, into the rebirth, they go into with the spirit ancestors and go into this, you know, out of body experience, and then come back, and then you come back, you know, you went into sort of a death experience, then come back out alive. You can emerge from the chamber, emerge from the temple, you know. You see, you can take people who have passed away into here, into these chambers. You know, they're not coming back out again, but you come back out again. You know what I mean? Now, whether you want to put a negative interpretation onto it, whether it's, you know, the damned, we don't know who writ that writing. You know, so, you know, this doesn't necessarily have any, you know, anything to do with Satan or, you know, the undead or vampires or bad or anything like that. It's just Pictish artwork, but someone's picked up on it. You know, and then they've gone on to the pentagrams, and they ended up, you know, associating that with, you know, the dark forces and the dark side, maybe because these chambers are not perfectly aligned up with the astral things, you know, but you can go into them and come back out again, you know, maybe, you know, so, you know, it'd be interesting to know whether or not, you know, they took people who had misbehaved or bad people down there, you know, or even, you know, and then came back. Or whether it was just a natural place, you know, because they thought it was beautiful and it was natural made, and it was by the ocean, and they took people into there, you know, because it was a nice, you know, spiritual place. You know, we don't know how many people. It's not exactly like on Dusk Till Dawn when they've got that massive canyon behind in Mexico, and they've got all the massive piles of piles and piles and piles and piles of all the people that the vampires had preyed on in that film in Dusk Till Dawn. You know, I mean, how many bodies were in this cave? You know, I mean, just a few. So it's we don't really take the Scots people to be cannibals, like we don't really think that the people, they're not, the Picts aren't, well known for cannibalism. So, yeah, but that's where I think this whole, Lost Boys and stuff like that's come from. But it also fits with Robin Hood. Actually, if you think of it in the Robin Hood Prince of Thieves film, in the Kevin Costner version, under the Nottingham Castle, they've got the old hag, haven't they? The old woman in the caverns, because Nottingham's got caves and caverns. Nottingham's known for caves and caverns. They had the thieves' caves, didn't they, in Nottingham? And then they used this whole ancient pagan Celt part bit of it all when the Sheriff of Nottingham is meeting the old hag and she's doing the witchcraft underneath in the Nottingham caves, So I think in that film there's a little bit of a kind of like maybe tribute or homage to this kind of whole pentagram style thing, But that's not to say that it definitely, these Pictish people were bad or evil or anything at all like that, or that people were killed and put down there. A lot of the Celts said that people used to be banished, they used to send them away, like shun them from the clan, for punishment rather than anything else. So maybe it was just, and with the leaf and life growing there, if that leaf represents life, the way I read this symbol is it's almost like, fish diving. A fish can jump out of the water, but it can't survive unless it dives back down again. And then also, if you fire an arrow into something and kill it, and it's stuck in, if it stays in there. But then you've also got this other thing of, you can go into use psychedelics and go into the death experience and then come back again. It's almost like the difference between a light beam. If you shine a light beam and it's the right alignment, it can bounce off something and then come back out again. Or if it's not aligned, it can't get in there. If it goes in there, it doesn't come back out again. So there's a lot. I read a lot of kind of hunting stuff mixed up with religious stuff, and then you've got the whole fish, hunting, and there are a lot of things. I think the orange ones are a little bit misleading because I think they've drawn it a bit different. I definitely say, I definitely throw that refraction in there as well, the light refraction. But it's just very odd that you got these people coming. They're saying they've got evidence of people from the steppe north of the Black Sea, which you're more than a stone's throw to China. You've probably done half the journey, and then you've got those Chinese symbols. That some of those Chinese symbols are very, very. They're getting towards this kind of moon going across. The sun, the top and the bottom, the high sun and the low sun, and then the moon going across. Because I did a video on the cross. The Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. You've got the sun at the high time, the sun at the low time, and then you got the moon going across the recumbent. You got the Holy Spirit coming through everything. It's where, in fact, Dr. Gail Higginbottom, she actually is very, very agreeable with all the things that I think. In fact, everything that she said, she's one of the people that I only watched her yesterday as well, and I really, really enjoyed it. Like, I kind of felt that I had a deep kind of connection and saw things the same way she did, She's saying that, these people had, the study of the outside world and the alignments and the study of the inside world, the spirituality, and it was a whole holistic subject where it all came together, and a lot of their symbolic things were the crossover and overlap of that knowledge, I think that is pretty much all I wanted to talk about it. So, you see, spiritually, if someone is aligned, to be honest and good with a certain belief system you've got, you know, which might be sharing or caring if you've got a certain order of priests, and you know, if you want to be a member of this clan, then you align people so they share things, they're honest and they're good, you know, and then it works. You build these structures and things aligned with the sun, so on you can know, you know what the time of year it is, and you know, and all this, and then it's to do with alignment, and you get this alignment thing here, you know. When you see, you know, if the fish has been, if the light's lying to you and it's not in the right place or not. So I think that Pictish, you know, to sum it all up, I think that's what the Pictish symbol's got in it. Very strange that, you know, Robin Hood, and then Robin Hood fired an arrow, and then, you know, where it landed, that's where he's going to be buried, and you've got this kind of like bow and arrow type thing, but then you've also got the burial mound in it. Funnily enough, at the hill fort near us, one hill fort, it's like being on a big boat, and it's like the bow of the front, the boat at the front. If you actually follow that for 3.5 kilometers, there's another big site that people are saying is called the Warrior's Tomb, which is like a big tumulus, you know. And it's funny that there's this Robin Hood story in Mirfield where you've got that Norman mound, that Norman Mirfield Castle mound, but yet just next to that is Robin Hood's grave, and he fired an arrow, and where it landed, he was going to be buried. But yet you've got these Robin Hood tales all over. You've got Robin Hood tales in Herefordshire, you've got Robin Hood tales in Yorkshire, and you've got Robin Hood tales in Nottingham. Then you got Robin Hood tales, you know, at Whitby, and then you've got the whole Never mind, you know, Robin Hood's Bay at Whitby, and then there's actually a really good video on YouTube about the Bram Stoker story in Dracula. It's a really, really good video on YouTube, and it goes through everything to do with Bram Stoker and Dracula, everything to do with what influenced him and how he did the story. And one thing they didn't tell you in that video is they didn't talk about, they talked about Whitby, but they didn't talk about Robin Hood, and they didn't talk about the Lost Boys, vampires, and they didn't talk, you know, Painter's Cave, because Bram Stoker is a vampire. He meant to have come from, you know, Romania, which is heading over towards steppe direction, gypsies and all that, which is the same as people in Scotland on the coast came over from, you know, the steppe. And a lot of those of people from the steppe had the whole mushroom iconography and stuff like that, because I watched videos on that. So you've got that whole people coming to England and living on the coast and in Orkney and that lot from the steppe with strange ways and habits. You got like and then you've got the Painter's Cave with the pentagrams on it, you know, and the damned. And then you got vampire stories on the coast. You know, they didn't mention the Painter's Cave in any of those videos actually, so I'm quite glad that I found out about that, because I think that plays into it a lot more than they've said. They didn't mention it in that BBC programme. So, you know, and then there's that whole kind of strange thing about, you know, the fact that vitamin A, you know, people wouldn't have known back then. No, you've only got to take a certain amount of vitamin A or it's dangerous to your liver. I mean, they'll have just had it, you know, random amounts of it. So I think people who live and travel around the coastline definitely could have been affected by eating a lot of fish. Excess vitamin A could have ended up, you know, causing certain, you know, variations in how people's appearances are over, you know, hundreds of years. And then you've got that Daniel, because Daniel Craig looks a little bit like that. You know, I'm kind of a little bit that way sort of looking myself. You know, and then he actually, funnily, he makes a point out of chucking those two fish down on the floor when he walks out the water in the next Bond film. So I'm actually going to be looking forward to seeing this new Doctor Who when it comes out. Well, these characters have been in it before, but they've kind of like sort of they've redone them a little bit from last time. Yeah, it's a bit disappointing that they've drawn this orange one, so it looks like it's kind of a dagger going through it diagonally, when actually on the actual, it's not like that at all, is it? It's bit different. It's a shame it's worn away so much. It is a kind of shame that it's worn away so much. But there's definitely, you know, it's got aspects of that Tassili in it, you know. That makes me wonder and question whether that Tassili is authentic and genuine, you know. I'm always, never mind being split two ways, like, you know, is it prey for preying or is it prey for hunting, you know, I'm always skeptical about things, you know, has somebody forged this, you know, Was it conjured up in the 1800s, this cauldron, and deposited there, or not? You know, because you can date things, but there's always a chance of it being contaminated. You know, someone could have contaminated it if they'd wanted to. So you know, that's what I wanted to say about the Sculptors Cave art. I think there's, you know, burial mount stuff in there. I think there's sunrise and sunset, moon going across. Then you've got hunting and praying. You've got that light diffraction thing. Then you got the mushroom in there as well. And then, you know, so there's a lot in it. I mean, you could even throw the Chinese symbols in there as well, you know, as well as the Algerian ones, you know. I think the people from Algeria came all the way around up the French coast, around Spain, and up anyway. And there's a lineage going back to that. My personal thing with the whole, I'll say this because that Sacred City video was really, really good actually. What I'll say is this: if that American scientist is correct about Petra being the origin of Islam, and if it is all about this part here is about the burial mound, you know, at the bottom, and the kind of, you know, the sunrise moon at the top, sun and the moon, right? Then, and they've always had a special wall that the sun shone on. It's got to be in the right direction. I would trace that religion coming back to the west, all the way back into Africa, and all the way back to those cave paintings, because they had a wall that had pictures on it that was sacred, and it was under shelter. And then obviously as the pastures dried up, as the planet changed and it all went to desert, they were kind of pushed out of that area and they had to move. And this is when you get some coming to the west, over towards out of Africa, you know, towards where Islam area is now. And then you got some coming the other way up the coast and around France and Spain and France. And then you got the dolmens, and then they end up aligning stuff. And then you get all the Karnak stones and Irish sites and Orkney, and then, you know, how it Croatia, they all line up, and it's this very educated Druid class. And, you know, and then you've got people coming across from the other way, from, you know, even from China across the steppe, you know, with symbols and stuff like that. So there's always a merging of different things. And I think clearly the Scottish Pictish they've got some influence from those peoples from the steppe. And they've clearly got some influence from those people coming up and around the coast, you know, building all the cairns. And if you look at Wales, the funny thing about Wales is that there are hardly any sites in the middle of Wales. They're all around the coast, you know. A lot of the Irish ones are around the coast. So if it were coastal people travelling by sea, you know, then you probably suspect they ate a lot of fish, you know, as well. So, you know, it could have been those type of people. So I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say on it. I wanted to cover both the relevance to some of the new things that have been released, like, you know, those vampire films, because I think it's important to reference the things that these have influenced. They've been an influence on. But it's definitely not any Celtic spirals anyway. There are no spirals or knotwork on it, and that's what makes it different. But the thing is, if you go back to the Algerian stuff, it's similar type of symbology. There aren't any spirals or knotwork on that either, you know. But then again, the Chinese don't. They have a more of a symbolic kind of writing. I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say on it now. Been going for an hour and 5 minutes.